Hey everyone, Joe Waxman here. In this video, I want to talk about something which I think is pretty important that needs to be addressed. And the title of this short little talk is going to be where macrobiotics and other grain-based diets went wrong. Okay, so just quick recap in case you don't know. I was born and raised in a macrobiotic household. My father taught it for many years. Both my parents studied with the Kushis, big macrobiotic teachers, Japanese teachers. My father recently died of cancer, bladder cancer, that metastasized throughout his body to his lungs and liver. Normally I talk about astrology, but since my father's death, I've just sort of been really just had a major paradigm shift. It actually started before then because I was having some health problems. My father was having health problems. He actually had a lot of health problems that he was modest about because he didn't want to tarnish the reputation of macrobiotics or his livelihood, which he was, teaching and counseling. And it's not that I don't mean to diminish him or his knowledge. He knew a lot and he was very excellent at many things. But there's some key points and factors that are missing within the teachings of macrobiotics and other grain-based diets. And at least according to my experience, knowledge, and a lot of the findings that a lot of scientists, doctors, researchers, and experts alike, nutritionists, are coming to the conclusions these days based on modern technology, specifically the effects of blood sugar from grains and other carbohydrates due to the fact that we have what's called continuous glucose monitors now. So a lot of people are monitoring their blood sugar at all times and recording what is spiking blood sugar and what isn't. And the reason why this is significant is that, number one, we didn't have it before. We didn't know, right? We could say like, oh, sugar will spike your blood sugar, but whole grains won't. Well, that's wrong. It's wrong. It's just, but there are many things that we can do it's not as simple as that. There are many things that we can do to minimize blood sugar spikes. And the importance of blood sugar awareness is that when blood sugar spikes, it releases insulin. And there's probably many factors, and I'm not a scientist, I don't claim to be, but I do have basic understanding and a solid understanding and a solid foundation in this whole topic. Insulin is a fat storage hormone. So insulin makes us gain weight. So this idea that carbs make you gain weight is real. I poo-pooed this whole notion for a while, and I was like, I thought it was stupid, like, oh, carbs make you fat, but fat doesn't make you fat. Well, actually it's the combination of carbs and fat together, but carbs alone is even worse in many ways, because it'll just, you absorb, your blood sugar goes way out of control, and that's bad. When your blood sugar is really spiking, it has many, excuse me, sorry, just, I want to say scratch my butt. It's not my butt, actually, it's my thigh, but anyway. Yeah, so, if you're just doing carbs without other things, that's even worse because then your blood sugar is going to be way out of control. And I can testify that for like basically my whole life. My blood sugar was getting worse and worse and worse and I know that because of how intolerant I was to not having, a carb, something, like bread or pasta or rice or something carb rich in order to raise my blood sugar. There was a constant chronic issue with me, like just having to keep my blood sugar, fueled. And I didn't think I was like, I thought maybe I was like too tight, too contracted. My pancreas wasn't good at regulating my blood sugar, but in reality, it was just the overconsumption of carbs for too long and the unawareness about that. And there are many other factors going into, like, you can look at, phytates and lectins, which I've learned about over the years, which are an issue with grain heavy foods usually. Yeah, and those are bad. in excess. You know, small amounts are healthy or fine. You're not going to get rid of all of them, and our body even makes some of them, but it's okay. Lectins, I think, and oxalic acid, but small amounts are good. Large amounts are not good. But you know, having a regular blood sugar, and when you go with zero or limited carbs, I should say, because like I do eat beans. Beans have carbohydrates. I do sometimes have grain products or other starchy foods like sweet potato. Like I'll alternate depending on how I feel and, you know, my digestion, my intestines. If I'm more constipated, then I feel like those things help relax the intestines more and whatnot, depending on my activity level. Like, you know, if I know I'm going to be active, which I usually am, so like midday, I can have some, you know, maybe some bread or right or whatever. You know, it depends on what it is. Like, I'm not going into details here. I'm just trying to create a broad spectrum overview. You know, towards the end of the day, I might be a little more cautious because that's when I'm less likely to be active. I'm winding down, you know, like depending on how active I was in the day, that will determine if I go on a walk after dinner. Ideally, I would go for a walk after dinner. Scratching my thigh again for some reason. But if I've been active all day, sometimes like I'm just too tired. So, you know, that's when I would be more careful. Also, fruit, you know, fruit is something that also you have to be mindful of and be careful of, especially in non-seasonal weather, temperature, times of year. And fructose can make you gain weight as well, right? So yeah, so the carb issue is huge, and the main point of this talk is where they go wrong. Well, these macrobiotics and grain heavy diets or grain based diets basically put grain as, they deified grain and carbohydrates. They put it on a pedestal, and they made it above everything else, and they said grain because people for, you know, in civilized nations all across the world base their diet on grain. Therefore, this is the food for man and food for development. And they said, even to the point where in macrobiotics they would say it's not a meal unless you have grain, right? And then they have all these talking points around grain, you know, about, you know, it's meal equals grain, you know, like meal, like cornmeal, oatmeal, wheat meal, all this meal. Meal means grain, right? Or in Japanese, I think the kanji, the character for rice is mouth and peace, combination of those two, something like that. So there's all these like anecdotal talking points about like how grain equals, you know, the food for man, and that we should always eat grain and blah blah blah. And I just don't think this is accurate. First of all, grains don't want to be eaten. They don't exist for us. They exist for themselves. They are just like everything else, like all animals and all plants. They exist for their own reasons. They exist because they're alive. They're beings. And if you're not sensitive to that fact, then you just are not sensitive. You're not a sensitive person. I suggest developing some sensitivity. You know, maybe do some more meditating. But grains are a living organism that that they're not meant for. They're not our slaves. They're not. God did not put them there to be. That's a very religious sort of perspective, which I'm not interested in at all. Well, God's like this being that's putting these things for man. That's stupid. It's ignorant. That's dumb. Like you're not an evolved person if that's what you think, and you're probably not going to be listening to me anyway. But no, grain is not food for man. Like who said so, right? That's like saying like this person is put here to be your servant, right? That's the same kind of logic, right? Or these class of people, like a certain race, whatever. I'm not going to get into, you know, specific, but like certain races are here to serve other races. That's stupid, right? Just like it's the same kind of thinking that grain is here to serve man. No, like no, they're here for themselves. Grain is here for itself. That's why it exists. It's its own. It's a seed. It's a seed. It's a seed to a plant, and the plant exists for its own reasons. We are consuming that plant just like we consume, you know, everything else, animals included, right? We're taking. right? You know, which goes into this whole idea where vegans have, where they think like plants all belong to them and animals are off limits. Like if they eat anything animal, it's stealing, right? Whereas plants are just like a gimme, like they don't have to consider it at all, just like free for all, like placing the animal life way above the plant life. Any case, and I'm very sensitive to animal life. I'm also very sensitive to plant life. I don't like to waste either. I respect all living beings and all living things, and I don't want to take anything for granted, right? Neither animal nor vegetable nor mineral, for that matter, nor spirit, right? So all that being said, grain and carbohydrates are not man's food. They're not. There's no such thing. Like we are highly flexible, highly adaptable creatures, beings, right? We can survive on fat. In fact, people did that for thousands of years. And it's not to diminish the role of grain. Grain had a major role in the development of civilization, right? You think about all these developed societies, all the major ones, right? They had grain as their central food. Why? Because they didn't have to chase after the animals. The grain doesn't run away. You can plant it, it stays there until you harvest it, right? You know, minus the bugs that have eaten and run away with it. But yeah, therefore you can build a civilization around a stable product, and therefore if you have a steady supply of food, you can also feed animals. Then you can have, you know, animal agriculture and so forth, so on. You can build cities. If you're constantly chasing animals, then you have to be nomadic, right? And you can't build a civilization, right? A rolling stone gathers no moss. In order to gather moss, you can't be rolling. So in order to not roll, you need something very stable, and that's grain. That started with grain. But it doesn't mean we have to stay there, because for thousands of years before we had civilization, you know, and then like history is a mess. We don't know what really, but let's just say like, okay, there was the modern civilization, then there was like pre-civilization where everyone was just nomadic. For tens of thousands of years, who knows how long, maybe millions of years, or hundreds of thousands of years, man was surviving without much, you know, carbohydrates, you know, tubers, roots, occasional wild grasses. But for periods of time, maybe they just had meat, right? You know, or like, especially in the winter, right? Where there wasn't anything growing and they just had to hunt a woolly mammoth or something. You know, all different scenarios. There's all different scenarios. And I'm not saying that all primitive people were just meat eaters and they didn't eat any vegetables. Well, like, again, vegetables don't run away. So vegetables and roots and tubers and grains and seeds and fruits are very easy food for the picking, right? Especially if they're available, but they're not always available. So our bodies are flexible and adaptable, and we have different modalities where we can survive on fat. And we have this body. Here's the thinking that's wrong. This is your body. This is not your body. This has been here for millions of years before you. This body does not belong to you. It's been millions of years in the making, and it's a highly refined, evolved, flexible, technologically advanced. Like, this creation is the most wondrous machine in the universe, or at least in this world, in this, you know, it's incredible, and we have to learn about it. We can't be the host. We can't just be like, this body does what I say it does. I'm going to feed it grain, and if it doesn't work well, I'm going to demand that it does. Like, it doesn't work like that. You have to be open and flexible and understand, like, what does this body need? Like, you don't know. You don't just come in here being like, well, my teacher said to eat grain, and therefore that's it. We're going to sleep. We're just going to eat grain until we die of cancer at 60 or 70, like all the macro teachers. Like, fuck off. I mean, sorry, it does get me hot-blooded, because like, it's the ignorance in the macro community is just like, I just want to punch these people in the face. Like, I literally, and I'm not like, you know, like, you know, also like, fuck pretenses. Like, I'm just not into this idea of like behaving like I think like a spiritual person should. Like, I know I'm spiritual, and I don't give a shit if you think I'm spiritual. Like, some of these people are just fake fuckers, fake assholes. So, and they deserve a beating, because they're going to get cancer and die. So they deserve to get beat up first, before that, so that maybe they can wake up. And if you think that's harsh, I mean, just studies Japanese Zen. In Japanese Zen, and I know I'm not like a Zen master or anything, so don't, but Zen masters did beat their students. and the logic behind that was if some students get beaten up or even die in their training, it can help others gain enlightenment. So maybe you don't like that style, but it's not unheard of. It is what it is. Any case, I'm not actually going to do any beating up. Like I'm a Gemini. I love to express myself. I love to exaggerate. I love to talk. So I'm just being a Gemini. I'm being, mouthy. Geminis can get themselves into trouble because of their mouth, what they say and stuff like that. And that's all I'm doing. Like I'm all talk. I'm all bark, no bite. Like I don't fight anyone. I don't hit anyone. But that being said, some of these people do deserve to get beat up because they're so stupid, right? And a lot of these people, like death after death after death, and prior to their death of cancer, young, they will continue to do the same thing and change nothing. And they'll just be like, oh, I'm so sorry that this person died of cancer. There's probably some stupid excuse that they have, and they're just like, oh yeah, that's why. Every single person that dies of cancer or some other disease early, and they're just like, oh, excuses. Let's just keep doing the same thing because this is healthy. Gotta be healthy. My teacher said it was healthy. Oh, I'm don't have good health, but this is healthy. It's health is the whole thing. Health. That's what they're going after. They want health. They don't want health. They want health, right? The idea of health. It's supposed to be healthy. If I'm not healthy, I'm doing it wrong. It's my fault. I just need to keep doing it harder. Like chew more grain. Like just pound the like eat. Just control myself. And that's the other thing, like with a carb heavy diet, like cravings are just out of control because your blood sugar is out of control. This is blood sugar on Macrobiotics and every other grain heavy diet. It's just this all day, all night, all this all the time, just up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. They're all unhealthy. So save the ones who can burn it off with high levels of activity, right? If they're athletes or former athletes and they train their body to be very active, then but still, even then, they're doing high carb, low fat, so they're not getting good mineral absorption. I mean, so osteoporosis is an issue, teeth health, all kinds of things, right? It's just endless. And the cravings are out of control, so they're like, and a lot of them want to be vegan, so they're just like every single meal practically, it's like, what fried foods can we eat to satisfy our intense cravings that we just like out of control cravings. What fried foods can we eat? So fried foods cause cancer because they're oxidizing the fat and the carbohydrates, right? And the proteins, right? And those they do. That's what, and so like they're always doing that, like fried foods, over roasted foods where they're burning the fat, like fatty seeds and nuts, and then baked with oil. Because they're constantly dissatisfied. They're never satisfied. And I know this because I did it my whole life. Never satisfied, because that's the paradigm with grains and carbs, is that you're constantly hungry because it's burning, right? You shoot your blood sugar up, then it goes way down. The grains, they digest so fast versus fats. And when you have high carbs, you can't eat a lot of fat because then you get fat. So it's high carb, low fat. So all hard carb diets are low fat. Otherwise, you're just getting fat, right? And then high carb, and then you're just on this horrible roller coaster. And it's bad. It's bad thinking. It's bad. It's wrong. It's bad and it's wrong. It's bad and it's wrong. Like, I'll just be blunt about it. Like blunt as a baseball bat. It's bad and it's wrong. You can't just base a diet on grain. It's stupid and it's ignorant and it's wrong. And these people are wrong, and they're stupid and they're ignorant and they're wrong. And I'm not being flexible about it because it's bad and it's wrong. Like, it's just bad and wrong. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. And I am the foremost expert in the world because I say so, because I did it my whole life, and I did it for 100% of my life. And I was born and raised into it, and I've seen all sides of it. So I am the expert. And, these teachers who are probably going to die young in a few years of cancer or some other debilitating disease are not the experts. I am. So you're hearing it from the world's foremost expert on grain-based diets that it's bad and wrong. Okay, I just, call me out if you feel like it. I don't know what you can. Can you get away with it? Yeah, but it's not easy because you have to be very, very active. And then you need to be way up on nutrition, and you can't be vegan. I mean, that's just a short-lived, like some people are vegan on a high carb diet, but they just don't know that they have there's a half-life to that, and there's a time limit that they can do that, and eventually they're gonna have to get off it. And that's all that is. You know, if they're doing it for now, they're like, oh, he's wrong, I feel great, I've been doing it for 3 months and I'm fantastic. I'm just exaggerating. They could be doing it for a few years. Try your whole life, right? And then see how it goes, right? And then, you know, or 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. That's when these people typically die of cancer. Sometimes 50 years they can do it. Then they die of cancer. And they're hiding all their health issues all along the way because they definitely have them, right? Or they're heavily active, like way beyond what most people can do, like they're running marathons or riding their bike all the time. But they're probably going to get osteoporosis or some other mineral deficiency, unless they're transitioning over to a higher fat, higher protein diet, like with more animal food, right, and more good quality fats, right? Then they can do it. But that's kind of what I'm talking about, and I'm talking about the need for a certain amount of good quality fats, and not excluding animal fat, right? Not excluding it. This veganism is just modern bullshittery. You know, it's just modern bullshittery. Like, there's no such thing in the past. None. Like, nobody ever did. Or was like, let's all be vegan. No, nobody ever did that until modern times. Right? Because they weren't stupid. They knew, like, okay, like, if we don't get good nutrition, we're going to die of malnutrition, right? So we're going to eat anything we can get, right? You know, whether it's the animal itself or the milk or the eggs or, you know, the organs or whatever. We're going to eat all of it, right? So anyway, guys, where these macrobiotics and these grain-based diets go wrong is they ideologically put grain and carbohydrates on a pedestal. They make it into, they idolize it, right? And it's a false idol, right? It's the golden calf that shall put no idol before me, right? God, yeah. There is no food. There is no food that's like, oh, the holy grail of foods. And I'm not here to demonize carbohydrates either. Like, there's a role for them. Just stop idolizing grains and carbs. They're not food for man. That's stupid and it's wrong. It's just like, I don't know how, I want to be like as blunt and as forceful as I can about it. It's stupid and it's wrong. And if you're offended by it, good, fuck you. You're just an idiot. And you know, I have to say these things to because nobody's listening, right? Like, nobody's you know, like, everyone's so soft. Oh, we have to be so polite. Oh, we cannot be. Oh, we have to act spiritual. Like, fuck your bullshittery. Like, I'm tired of it. I'm just goddamn tired of it, because it's all fucked up. Like, because people are dying, and yeah, like, it hit home. Like, when my father died, because I thought he was the last. You know, I really had faith in him, and I thought he knew what he was doing, and I thought he was gonna, like, you know, live till in his 90s and show, like, you know, how wonderful, you know, macrobiotics could be. And he idolized grain and carbohydrates, and finally I see the light, because I'm experiencing, not just with what the research and information and nutrition is coming out with, but my own experience. Like, it's a revelation. Like, eat less carbohydrates, control your blood sugar. You will just improve 1,000,000,000%. A billion. Like, my energy is so much better. My muscles are bigger. I mean, my face is slimmer. My energy, everything is better. Right. And yeah, like, I'm no doubt gonna run into issues with my health eventually, because that's life. I mean, we always have to make adjustments, right? And I'm not demonizing grain or carbohydrates. I still think there's a role for them, because that's just, I don't want to slingshot, you know, but it has to be limited, and you can't idolize it. And you gotta know that if you're going to eat grain, even whole grain, even like rice balls, you know, the most Japanese pressure cooked, you know, umeboshi nori rice balls, you know, made by a Japanese Zen master, you could eat, that's still going to raise your blood sugar. Unless you do, you know, unless you know how not to, which is basically their tricks, and which I'm not going to go into, and then you're really active afterwards and you're balancing it out with a whole bunch of other stuff. But potentially it still can, is the point. It can raise it. It's not safe. There's no safe, carbohydrate or food in general, even, right? Everything you have to know, all of the foods and what they are, when to eat them, how to eat them, right? And all the details, right? So this whole notion of carbohydrates, grain, it's food for man, just fucking throw in the trash. Just put it in the trash can. Doesn't belong there. It's a food. It's a nutrient, and it has its place. It has its role, and it has its dangers, right? Carbohydrates can be very, very damaging if not understood or eaten properly, and taking the right precautions. And I just want to make that abundantly clear, because people are not listening. They're not listening. So, and a lot of people still won't listen, but I just hope to piss enough people off that maybe they'll start doing their own research and be like, oh, Joe's such an asshole, like, let's go research and figure out how to prove I'm wrong. And then they're going to end up proving that I'm right, because I know I'm right, because I fucking do a lot of research. Like every single day I'm reading and listening to videos and like finding out what's real, what's not. And like I know what I'm talking about, because I'm just like, when I want to understand something, when I want to obsess about like understanding and diving deep into something, I do, because that's Scorpio's nature. And Gemini's endlessly curious. Scorpio is deep diving, research, getting to the bottom of things, right? And so that is part of my nature. Like, please do, like, try and prove how much of a idiot I am. Please, I dare you, right? Most of these people, they're too late. They don't like research. They just want to believe their stupid nonsense and just be like, oh, grain is food for man. Oh, my teacher told me so. They're idiots. And they're probably going to die of cancer. So, all right, that's it for now. Please do your research, right? Don't even believe me. Just like start looking at like the role of blood sugar, and don't just listen to these grain-fed idiots and be like, oh, this is what people ate for thousands. The reason people ate, we're not living the same way. That's okay. Here's the final point. And I know I said this before, but it deserves saying it again. We're in such vastly different territory than people were living, prior to now, right? First of all, before electricity, there was no central air, there was no central heating, there was no central cooling, there was no AC. People were living very hard lives and being active all day long, right? So you can't compare yourself. That's just stupid. You cannot compare yourself to traditional people. Like, try living without electricity and any power, and just do all. Most of these people are weak, and they may not appear fat on the surface, right? But they are fat, like, essentially, like they're just like fat souls, fat beings. They're just like excessive, weak, like they're pussies. Like all these grain-based diet people, they're all mostly. Now, they're just like weak, pathetic, ineffectual people who can't do anything. Mostly, not all, right? So yeah, they like this whole idea, like, oh, this is what people ate for thousands of years. That's wrong. Like, many more thousands of years, people, lived at least for a period of time during the year, each and every year, on fat, ketosis, because that's just inevitable. Like, you can't just always have a steady supply of grain. Yeah, that did happen with civilization, but prior to that. And yeah, there are benefits. I'm not, again, there are benefits to carbohydrates and grains, and how it affects the mind. And so we can include them. But like, again, this whole traditional argument is wrong. It's stupid and it's ignorant. And like, so like, oh, people ate this way for thousands of years. Yeah, it's dumb and just easily, defeated in like, well, many more thousands of years people didn't eat that way. So it's like, you want to be really traditional, fat is traditional. Eating fat is traditional, right? Eating carbohydrates is traditional too, but like, we're not, why idolize one and demonize the other? Why? It's ridiculous. This is nonsense. This is just stupid. It's religion. It's religion. That's what these grain-based diets are. They're religion. They're a cultish religion. So put that in your oatmeal and eat it. Should probably give you diabetes and leaky gut and Hashimoto's and psoriasis and eczema and osteoporosis and cancer. All right, that's enough for now. All right, thanks.